Welcome to The Way Home with Laura Smith, the show that brings you wonderful guests, helpful advice, and uplifting stories. The Way Home. Live inspired. Here's your host, Laura Smith.
Well, I think there's probably a lot of things that make this country and the world seem divided at many junctures. However, when it comes to loving our animals and just loving animals in general, that is something I think that most of us have in common. How much do we love our domestic animals, and then also just in the greater scheme of things, the wild animals, and truly how connected we all are. And I have a fascinating guest today who has written a book that will warm your heart. And if you ever had a chance to read James Herriot's books back in the day, that shows you how old I am, you'll get that same incredible feeling. We are going to be hearing from Dr. Douglas Hutchins, and he is a veterinarian of over 4 decades and has such vast experience, but he's put much of it into a brilliant book with incredible anecdotal stories, also tips for caring for animals. It's called Dr. Doug's Animal Answers. And I just couldn't be more pleased than to have you on today. We need some upliftment, and your book does just that. Thank you, Doctor.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I think that, being a veterinarian, I said that, if a person can live where they want to live and do what they want to do, they're pretty lucky. And when you enjoy your work like I did, I never had a job. It wasn't going to work. And it was interesting, when I started practice back in the 70s, all we saw was sick animals. That's why people came to you. And then practice has changed. We ushered in the modern era of medicine where it's all preventative now. And then you have your specialties such as emergency clinics, your dermatologists, ophthalmologists, and so forth. But I think when I practiced was so much more fun because every day I would see 60, 70 people a day, and every one of them, there was a problem. That's why they came to you. So it was a great time to practice, and one where you learned and saw so much.
Yes, and you were a mixed animal doctor, veterinarian, correct? So you could treat horses and cows, but also domestic kitty cats and puppy dogs, right?
Yeah, we did a little of everything. It was an interesting time, and of course, it's interesting, my textbooks were like an inch thick, and today the books are 3 or 4 inches thick. It's so much more knowledge, and we've become so specialized. It's incredible what we've learned and what they do with animals. It's interesting. We're kind of looking to prolong the life of a dog or a cat, like treating with chemotherapy for cancers and so forth. And I always tell people a month to a dog is like a year to you and I. And whereas in people, we tend to be trying to prolong life, and in animals, we do have euthanasia. The term euthanasia means the good death. And I think there is a time to die. And we tend to be looking at that more in humans now as compared to just keeping people alive that we know are dying.
Yes, it's true. It's an interesting concept when you think, one that I think many of us have thought about, how, we are able to put our dogs and our cats and all of our animals down that, we say are just too sick to go on because it wouldn't be fair or humane. And yet with us, we haven't quite gotten there yet. But I absolutely love your stories. Did you also read the James Herriot books yourself?
Oh, yes. They were big time when I were in practice. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
He did a great job.
And so, but you have the same, for me, that same beautiful texture of living in the countryside. You're up in Maine for most of your life, and Maine is just so beautiful. For my Hoosier friends who are listening here, maybe some have not been there, but at the time, especially when you got your license to be a veterinarian, you taught it was a time of real true country doctor stuff, right?
Very true. Very true. Yeah. The best kind of practice, I think, without question.
And you have so many stories that go back to even the beginning time of when you first became a doctor and then onwards towards, and yet they're they're so sharp with memory. Was it hard to come up with them, or does it all just come?
Oh, no, it just comes. It's amazing how you can remember so many details and stuff, but it's not that difficult when you get involved. Even remembering dogs' names, you associate it with something. Like I would go with a collie dog, I would think of hearing and ears, or a seeing eye dog, and so you would, and then learn the name and sort of do something to compare the name and stuff. People really appreciate it when you remember the name of that dog.
Well, I think, yeah. Oh, I bet. And you obviously you had an incredible connection with these animals. But what I love also about your stories and the chapters in them, your connection and your bond with the owners of the animals. I think I'm not certain that every veterinarian that's out there today has that same type of love. Sometimes you feel like when you come to the doctor or the veterinarian with your animal that they like your animal, but they're not so sure how much they want to deal with you. But
exactly.
Right.
Well, that's what I always said. You always, not only do you have a dog, you've got a client to deal with too. And many times they're upset. So you've got to handle both situations, especially with dealing with young kids and animals and stuff. Like I have the story of the girl when we had the dog with the pony with tetanus. And so I said to her mother, I've got to go to my van and get some medicine. Will you come with me? And I said to her, look, this pony's going to die. How do we handle this with your daughter? And she said, well, tell her the truth. So I went back and I passed her my stethoscope. And I said, listen to your pony's heart. She says, my gosh, that heart is really pounding hard. It sounds like it's going to rupture. And I said, well, that could happen. And what we should do is put your pony to sleep in the humane way, and it's called the good death, instead of letting that heart rupture. And she completely understood. And we put the pony to sleep, and she sat there, and she handled it very well. And I think I learned one thing: tell kids the truth. The story stays the same, and they understand it.
Yes, and you know what? There is such a thing as bedside manners in both your regular human physician and obviously as a veterinarian. You have those bedside manners and always have. Well, my guest is Dr. Douglas B. Hutchins. He has a wonderful book called Dr. Doug's Animal Answers. And the answers portion of it, I find so interesting. You have all these incredible stories of some of maybe your most memorable or perhaps favorite stories of through your vast career as a veterinarian, but the book is chock full of great advice and answers for people how to care for their animals. And I thought that was such a unique way to formulate the book in itself. It has everything in it for someone who wants to better connect with their animals, better take care of them, and yet also learn what it means to love these animals. What made you decide to format the book like that, so that it was both?
I think for that very reason, just because it would be more interesting and more informative for the people. As a matter of fact, I've had a couple of doctors call me and tell me that my section on Lyme disease is the best description they've ever seen or read of Lyme disease, and now they really understand it. And I also think the other thing that's really interesting, I like the history that I did of veterinary medicine and see how we've evolved, because originally the veterinarian was basically the blacksmith that took care of the horses when, like in wartime. I mean, the horse in the early times, importance, they talk about the dog being man's best friend. I think if you really examine it, the horse is probably a better friend than the dog from the aspect of all the things that the horse was able to do. They used the horse actually for meat originally, and then transportation, and then pulling wagons. Look in the Civil War. I think we lost 1.5 million horses in the Civil War.
That's really something that's so touching, and you see the connection and the bond that grows between humankind and their animals, and it really is fascinating. And the Lyme disease thing. That too, because, we are all probably mostly buying the most expensive drugs sometimes to keep our dogs and cats from getting these ticks. Do they work, those drugs?
Oh, yes, the tick prevention is pretty good. The problem you have is that 90% of your dogs will develop immunity and be fine with Lyme disease. But it's the 10% that have maybe some quirk in their immune system that doesn't allow them the ability to develop the immunity, much like people. Not everybody is going to get AIDS and die with AIDS, but the ones that get sick with it because of their innate way their body is working or their immune system or what have you. You know, it's interesting. When I first was a young kid, everything dealt with the heart. And then we went to the brain. And then now it's the immune system. And it's amazing. The immune system is really a very complex, and it's an amazing ability to fight disease. It's incredible.
And are you still learning and growing? And are you doing any type of practicing whatsoever, or just helping to take care of your own pets?
I do a little consulting. I've taught a couple of courses. I taught a course owning a horse in night school, and then I thought I would just put, I had such an interesting life and what I thought was an interesting career, so I thought I would put it down so I think kids would enjoy it. The thing I'd like to see them get out of my book is, number one, if you've got a dream or you want to do something, go for it. I went from a one-room schoolhouse in Penobscot, Maine, with about 300 people population, and I went there and I was able to get into Cornell. When I applied to Cornell in 1956, they were taking 60 students a year. 40 had to be New York State residents, and 20 were out of state. And they probably had, I would say, 400 or 500 applications, and I think they narrowed it down to 100 and interviewed 100 and took 20. So felt very fortunate to get in.
Absolutely. It was such a good school for that. And I love where you talk about, and expound on this a little, if you would, about how there are actual health benefits from having pets. And it's not just the usual, well, because we love them so much, it makes us feel good. There are actual health benefits. Tell us some of them. They
claim children, young kids will be socially much better adapted by having an animal. And also the animal is able to provide them with some additional immunity. So most kids that have animals are healthier. There are some that can be allergic, which is a little bit of a problem, but most of the time being around an animal gives you the exposure of certain diseases and stuff that improves your immune system.
Exactly. So, well, I claim that kissing my little puppy dog on the lips is good for my health. My mother doesn't agree.
Nothing like puppy breath.
Yeah, exactly. Puppy breath and puppy kisses. But I mean, honestly, is there something, is it okay to kiss your pets?
Well, I mean, plenty of people do. There's certainly a lot of disease potential in saliva. I mean, look at rabies, for instance. That's how rabies is transmitted via saliva. You get a bite wound, and then it gets in the saliva, and then it goes right up through into the immune system. And
right.
So the drooling from rabies is what gets you the exposure.
Yes. So tell us about the human-animal bond. This is a concept that goes back a very long way. So tell us about the...
Well, we call the human-animal bond as a mutually beneficial relationship between people and animals. And I think that you should understand, too, that when you're bonding with a dog or a horse or what have you, that's just as important to them. They claim horses never forget a bad experience. And so when animals bond with us as much as we bond with them.
Yes.
And
yes. I think animal abuse is something that I wish the laws were stricter, but it does seem as though it's getting more attention in this day and age, because it's just heartbreaking to hear about how some animals are greatly neglected or mistreated for that fact. And they're starting to take it seriously now in the law.
Well, don't forget, the original animal was one, we domesticated the dog because he came for protection because he was being hunted. Back in the early days, he was hunted and so forth, and prey would go after, the bigger animals would go after the animal for food. So the dog was domesticated, and that's what saved his life and allowed him to prosper. So,
yes.
Animal abuse, I think it has. I think it's interesting that they were saying that when animals first, were just loose and people would pick them up, or they'd come in the house or what have you, and they would just adopt them. And then the Animal Humane Society, I think, was started right at the time when they started trying to regulate or control stray dogs. That's when they basically started the humane societies or adoption facilities, was at a similar time.
Yes, and thank goodness for that, for sure.
Right.
And I am also happy to see that there's supposedly going to start being more of an end to this animal testing for science, in the name of science, to see those beagles from that Ridgeland facility that bred these poor beagles for animal testing, and that they were all released recently. Was one of the better stories to come out of the last week or so about animals.
It was interesting. My granddaughter is down in Chapel Hill, and she has a master's in public health, and she's working in a lab, and she's studying human neurology. And they started by using rats as their study animal. And, you see these rats in these little teeny cages, and my God, it sounds like an awful confining life. But she takes each one of them out every day and plays with them. It's a riot to see them. I mean, those rats really associate with her. They really are bonded. It's amazing. But she's really made it fun for her, and I think she does a great job with the animals. And I think a lot of people feel that way when they're doing it. But, I mean, we look at a dog like I said, a month to a dog is like a year to you and I. So when you give them, say, a chemotherapeutic drug, you can more or less assume what happens in a month to a dog could take a year in a person. Mm-hmm. So they're great for that purpose. I mean, I think research is incredibly important. And you have to start somewhere. But, the old beagle dog, certainly we had them at Cornell, but I thought we did a very good job of taking care of them.
Well, good. I'm glad that there are facilities that, take into consideration their needs as well. But Dr. Doug's Animal Answers is chock full of these wonderful, first of all, stories of your own veterinarian experience and the people that you get to know just by reading this book, Dr. Doug. It's so lovely. And there's just so much love pouring out of the pages, and also the fascinating information that people are going to want to use as a guidebook as well. You've got it all in here. It's getting highly acclaimed and winning awards. And I'm very pleased for you because, this is exactly what I think, the heart of America needs right now. We need stories like this. We need and also for our new generation of upcoming veterinarians. I have some in my family. I have cousins that are, going through school right now and to become one. And I know it's their life mission to really make a life out of being a veterinarian. So I am going to gift them with your book because I think that is probably the most valuable thing that they could get. And I want to thank you again for coming on and sharing your book and letting us hear your fabulous Maine accent, because I haven't heard one in a while. It's just terrific.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time, and I do hope that the book gets out and does well, because I think it's important and great. I would think it would be a great book to sit down and read the kids a chapter a night. My mother used to read us. We used to read stories. We had the Hardy Boys and stuff, and she would read us a chapter each night, and those were those precious times of my mother sitting in her lap and her reading and eating gingerbread and whipped cream.
Oh, my goodness. That is a wonderful memory. And you know what? The stories in your book are full of memories just like that will just warm your heart. So again, the book is called Dr. Doug's Animal Answers. Dr. Doug's Animal Answers. Get it, pick it up. Dr. Douglas B. Hutchins. Thank you. Bless you. And we really appreciate it. And so do all the animals.
Thank you, Laura. I really appreciate your time.
You're listening to The Way Home with Laura Smith. Once again, here's Laura.
Now, we all love and respect and are so grateful for our heroes, our first responders that take care of us whenever, there's a tragedy or an emergency. I have a guest today that's going to tell me about something that might shock you in terms of what they deal with, which is just part of the hazards of their jobs. Dr. Ryan Potter, he is the Doctor of Audiology and Vice President of Audiology at Hearing Life. Dr. Potter, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about this really important topic, which I did not know is something that our first responders have to deal with all the time, hearing loss.
The incidence is really high. As many as 80% of long-term law enforcement, 40% of firefighters, and 45% of EMS providers can have hearing loss just due to that repeated exposure to loud noises on the job each day.
Is there anything that they can do to help the situation? But if not, do they need to just regularly check in with an audiologist, even at a younger age when maybe we don't think of them as being, susceptible to hearing loss? Like maybe they're in their 30s or 40s or something. Should they still get it checked out a lot?
Yeah, I think that's the key, is just being aware and being proactive. Whether you're a first responder or, you're not in that work, if you ask somebody, when's the last time you had your hearing checked? Most people are going to go, I don't know, maybe grade school. And so, being really proactive, getting that baseline hearing evaluation, as you mentioned, I think at a younger age than maybe we would normally think of for first responders is really critical. And at Hearing Life, we're very supportive of that. We do offer a complimentary hearing assessment for everyone to just really get that baseline and understand your own hearing health.
Yes. I know that my cousin is a bus driver, a school bus driver, and they have to take hearing tests like almost every year. Our first responders, do they have to go in yearly for these tests, or is it something they just need to voluntarily do?
Yeah, in some instances or in many instances, there is a baseline evaluation or a requirement for hearing acuity to go into the line of work, maybe in law enforcement or something like that. But they don't necessarily routinely test it on a regular basis. And so that is a great reason why an individual should just be proactive on their own and say, you know what, I'm going to keep up on this. I'm going to check it out, and I'm just going to know where I am with my hearing.
Absolutely. Would you tell us a little bit about hearinglife.com and the hearing aid centers? What is unique about them?
Yeah, so Hearing Life is located throughout the country, and we offer, as I mentioned, those complimentary hearing assessments, following all best practices, just to really make sure we're providing a great evaluation and an understanding of your hearing. If we identify an issue with hearing, we really provide personalized care for each individual person that we see. And, if hearing aids are something that are recommended, that is something that we certainly do. For our first responders, again, we're very supportive of the amazing work that they do. And we have made available an ongoing 10% savings on hearing aids, which is stackable on top of any additional promotions that may be going on at the time for our first responders with hearing aids, and just really making sure that we're supporting them and getting the hearing help that they need, and being able to, be on point with great hearing in the really critical and amazing work that they do each day.
Oh, that's terrific. So that's hearinglife.com/hearing aid centers. And just maybe what would be just the first signs for someone, regardless of their age, that they might say to themselves, wow, I really should get my hearing checked out? Is there any kind of red flag?
Yeah, the most common thing I hear from patients is they're sitting across from me. They will say, you know what, it sounds like everybody's mumbling, or I just hear people talking, but it's not always clear. I can't make out what they're saying. And from there, noticing additional difficulty if, you find yourself in a group of people, or maybe difficulty hearing when there's some background noise. A lot of patients, they'll say, you know what, I'm not going to go to dinner with friends tonight because it's just too hard. I miss too much. I'm just going to stay home instead. And that's a huge red flag. And so at that point, you really should go ahead and get a baseline evaluation for yourself, which you can do that at hearinglife.com. There's a button you can click right there, and you can go ahead and schedule that for yourself.
I love that. HearingLife.com. Dr. Ryan Potter, Vice President of Audiology at Hearing Life and Doctor of Audiology, thank you so much. What an important topic that I think everyone needs to hear, no pun intended.
Thanks for having me, Laura.
Thank you all for listening to The Way Home this week, and to my wonderful guests. And may you all have a wonderful week that is safe, that's happy, healthy, and full of lots of miracles as well. I'm Laura Smith. See you next time from The Way Home.
Podcasts by Federated Media.